Welcome to The New Next, a podcast that addresses current events and how they will impact the future. Co-hosted by the inquisitive public speaking champion, Mike McVeigh, and energy, economics, and technology expert, Matt Jensen. Join us as we explore all things energy, economic, tech, and political, and how they will affect our future.
Podcasts typically grow by word of mouth. If you know anyone who would enjoy this content, sharing this in a message or by posting on social media would mean the world to us. Thanks for listening, and let's get started.
One of the things that we talked about off computer, off networking, was a new documentary that came out on Hulu called The Deep End. I believe it's Deep End.
Yeah.
Sounds right. And featuring the inspirational spiritual guru Teal Swan. And you're wanting to get some of my feedback. And I don't know if I want to talk directly about the documentary so much as the part of the documentary. Like, I did some research on it and stuff, and that documentary took place over 3 years of recording.
Yeah.
And she knew the cameras are on her and her followers for that whole time. So one of her responses is that she felt like they completely blindsided her, was one of her comments. And
after
I don't know
the
if
documentary came out?
Oh, yeah. And I was like, well, she didn't ask for edit rights or anything. Go ahead.
What did they say or what did she suggest that they blindsided her about?
Well, if you remember in the last episode when the private investigator shares their thoughts and how she responded to that. Yeah. That kind of thinking, mostly. Brenda and I, we watched it together, and we stopped it a lot because Brenda's degree was in psychology, and she deals with certain things. And with my degree in theology and talking about various kinds of motivational spirituality and stuff, leadership, spirituality, that crosses over into both of our areas. So it was a very intriguing. And I know what you're doing right now. You're making me talk about something that you're forcing me. Everybody can see this on video. He's literally reaching through the screen and forcing me to talk about this. So Brenda spent a lot more time researching it afterwards and was watching videos talking about the various things that she did or did not talk about, like how truthful the person was in the documentary. And
which person?
Teal Swan.
Oh, yeah.
She was watching like different psychologists and their counselors and stuff talking specifically about the suicide that Teal Swan openly embraces and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting that most of the ones that Brenda saw that she told me about did not think that the talking about the suicide experience. So basically this documentary, Teal Swan is a spiritual guru who specializes in people's pain, in the sense that she believes that if people share their most deepest, darkest pain, if they have suicide ideations and stuff, that when you're honest about that then you can move forward in life, whatever that might mean. And then she has various programs and retreats, some books and stuff that the goal is to help nurture that and to be able to be the best version of you that you can be. And suicide is one of the things that she's gotten a lot of flack about in the press and in social media. I will say, having been someone who definitely struggled with suicide a lot in my teenage years, and then again later on in life, I think I agree with the psychologist that my wife looked up, that just hearing about suicide or hearing her talk about the initial parts of suicide were not triggering. They were not going to lead to more suicides and stuff like that. That was, I think they do point that out a little bit in the documentary as well. But that, like, because I was thinking whenever I was at my worst time, and I have some friends of mine who we have this shared experience of feeling really close to the edge. One, I don't think we would have taken the time if we were in our worst spot to go type into YouTube to anything that was going to pull up Teal Swan's videos. I think it's people that might be more curious about suicide and considered it in the same way that one time I thought I saw a cartoon where some people were robbing a bank or something, like, I wonder what it would be like to rob a bank.
Yeah.
In that kind of sense, not an actual looking at suicide. And even from what I learned from Peer Support Network, working with law enforcement and working with civilians, that none of the things that she presents in the opening kind of things about suicide or about the pain and the hurt are necessarily triggering things. Obviously, some people can get triggered by various things, but generally, if you're in a state of about to kill yourself, you're not going to go watch TV or YouTube and try to figure out how to do it at that point. And I don't want to get caught into all of it. Now, the controversy that most of the people that were critiquing her, both the documentary and her style as a whole, is that the treatments that she offers, the retreats and whatnot, that those are not those are not safe. Those are not good ways to deal with people who are having negative body thoughts and negative mind thoughts. One example specifically that to me, of anything that was triggering in the whole thing and why the documentary crew should have honestly called the cops on her immediately, is when they basically waterboarded a young girl. I say young girl, middle 20s, and literally was drowning her. And maybe there was EMTs or some medical people on staff, but they went to a swimming pool of all places. So we're not even talking about regular water. We're talking about water of chlorine and whatever else in it. It was very hard to watch, especially because you knew it was real people. It's not one of the things of where you're watching an enactment or a movie trying to make a point. Like, one of the other things that concerns me about Ms. Swan is every time someone showed
Ms. Swan.
Ms. Swan.
Sound like a lawyer.
Every time someone shared their pain or somebody got hurt, like literally physically, mentally, psychologically, or whatever, she would always have kind of like a little twinge smile, like
you're weak.
You could see something in her eyes. Well, not just that, but like she preyed on that, like a predator. My initial thoughts, and I wanted to, again, I don't know her. I'm basing it purely off of the documentary and a couple articles, like in Wikipedia, because I think that they would be very litigious if they actually knew how to run a company. She definitely seems like a psychopath.
Yeah, totally.
She doesn't. She changes her feelings and forces herself to cry and stuff whenever she realizes she's supposed to be accused. There's a shame circle at one point where she had everybody in the room tell, "How do you feel about? What do you think that?" So, person A is being asked, how do you feel that person B feels about person C?
Oh,
and
was that with the new girlfriend?
Yes. Yeah. And all the people are basically reflecting what they feel about Teal Swan but they're saying like, hey, Matt, I feel that you feel that Teal is blah, 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 blah. And they're saying these things that this lady had no experience with and did not exhibit any of these emotions or any of these behaviors or microaggressions or anything. And and honestly, this is like episodes 3 and 4, so you have to get through the first two. The first two, she's a very self-aware person. She has a high emotional intelligence that is it is present. It's very obvious that she is much more hyper-aware than most people are. She's able to sense like little micro facial expressions and stuff. If you ever saw the show Lie to Me with it has a very similar kind of thing of where she just sees like a little twinge or something and is able to read a lot out of that. There's a couple times where she definitely got into what she wanted the person to have as an experience. Those were fun. I've been there on both sides of that, and it is actually a lot of fun in a weird way because, I am making fun of it a little bit, but I'm also being a little bit serious with what I'm going to do. So, Matt, how many siblings did you have?
One.
And the fact that you're here at one of my conferences or you're here at one of my retreats and you're paying a lot of money, you probably wanted to kill your sibling a lot, right?
Definitely not.
Oh, okay. See, the sense I'm getting from you, it's your parents. They wanted to kill your sibling, both of them, and they were trying to protect you from it because they liked you. You were the favorite sibling, favorite child. So they were trying to kill the other one. So some of your resentment towards your sibling and your parents comes from that specific thing. Well, I don't remember that. I mean, that's usually the response.
Yeah.
Someone's like, I don't remember this. And then they do a little bit of a hypnotic trance kind of thing, combined with a couple other elements, which, by the way, for showmanship value, amazing. Like, I respect the showmanship level, but
yeah, definitely
doing this with actual person's background and stuff. And then,
well, I don't think that she is a showman. Like, I think she believes it. And like you said, I didn't find that when she was encouraging people to visualize their suicide or visualize their death. Like, I didn't necessarily think that was really bad.
right.
The other stuff though, and like I've seen similar content on YouTube before, and I was like, wow, like this is way different than I thought it was. And like you were saying with the investigator and stuff, it was the investigator was like, you have this list of things that they have to basically prescribe to or subscribe, and if not, they're out. And she's like, this is clearly a cult. And then she's like, no, that's not true. Nobody has to do it. And then literally after that, they were like, well, we need to strengthen this agreement. So we can't let people from the outside in. You know, it seemed as much of a definition of a cult as I've ever known it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's the one thing that I really noticed, and this is honestly the reason why most of you who have never heard of her before have never heard of her. Like, everybody knows, Tony Robbins, Maybe you know Tim Robbins too, but most people know about Tony Robbins and all of his various kinds of mentorship and leadership. A lot of people know about Gary V, Vaynerchuk, but I had never heard of Teal Swan until you specifically mentioned the documentary to me. And the reason why is she doesn't know anything about leadership.
Yeah.
She doesn't know how to put a company together. Because one of the things my wife and I argued about is Amir is a person who had spent thousands of dollars, who made it to camp to a retreat twice, which means that in my thinking, so when Tony Robbins hosted an event that you're able to actually spend a week with him and his close people, they do screenings on their people. Like they do background checks. They look at safety checks and stuff. If someone's kind of mentally unbalanced, they're going to have people around to keep Tony safe because, that's the product and service. And
was Amir the guy wearing the basketball jerseys?
Yeah, he's the one wearing all the San Antonio Spurs. Yeah, the bald guy. And my wife and I had a very different impression of him watching this interview. But basically, he says, like, I think my life is good, but I have a feeling it's not. And this, and then she's like, well, I feel like you're not being completely, what was the word? Because it was like, this really rung in my head for about a week. Like, I don't think you're being completely honest, or you're not being, oh goodness. Anyway, and he repeats what she said. And then in my opinion, he said something that was very like, oh, well, I guess, and I'm just here because I hope that maybe you'll go on a date with me.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
so weird.
How does this make me feel? This makes me feel very uncomfortable, blah, 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 blah. And I took it as he was just being kind of a jerk because she basically told him that he didn't know what he was there. Like, he's trying to be honest, and she's saying that he wasn't being honest. So he's like, okay, well, then maybe I'm just here to date you. And my wife took it as, no, that dude, his whole reason for being there was to get with her.
Yeah,
like that was his only reason.
That's how I took it too.
I don't know. And then watching the scene after it where she said that this guy cannot be helped. There is no way at all to help him. I don't want any of my people getting close to him because it's dangerous. And so depending on how you view things, a newer member of the friends group takes on the visage of Amir's dead mom, and who had committed suicide when he was young. And he goes into tears and basically tells his mom he forgives her. And then allegedly he's now good. And the reason why that's traumatic on multiple levels, but the level that should concern everybody, regardless of beliefs and where you think things, is she just said, not even a few minutes before, we cannot trust him with anybody. He can't be helped. And yet she does something that, at least in the meantime, looks like it helps.
Yeah.
And I think I don't necessarily agree with the methodology, especially based on what the specific member, the new friend member, mentions why she did it and why she's trying to make a good impression. But if she did indeed take on the spirit of his dead mom, then this is it's very sad that no one can help him. Which is also another reason why I don't take it that he was actually there to date her. I think he honestly was searching, and
just confused.
Definitely confused. I mean, I think people that spend that kind of money asking a person who's very young in life the answers to life, I think they're definitely confused. I'm not saying young people can't provide answers, but yeah, if this would have been Tony Robbins, there would have been security checks and mental checks on this guy way before he ever got that close to Tony.
Yeah.
And so and my wife and I were actually arguing about that. I was like, no, there's no way she's this famous and doesn't have proper security. And then as we watched the rest of the documentary, like, oh, she really doesn't have the security. Oh, they don't know how to run a business. They're like on the small scale, but they're not able to break through to the next barrier of what it's going to take, because their goal is to overtake Tony Robbins ultimately. Like that's why I keep on mentioning Tony Robbins, because their goal is to overtake Tony Robbins and being the premier person. And there's a lot of things that she said that are correct, but she didn't have a good awareness of who she should keep close to her and what information she should share with the people that she kept close to her.
Yeah.
And that was very obvious throughout the documentary. So even if she is this amazing healing person, she needs to have a security chief that can allow for a little bit better protection. Go ahead.
Well, I just feel kind of like the difference between Tony Robbins and her is Tony Robbins seems to be kind of like a curator of personal development techniques. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I really felt like Teal Swan had felt that she kind of has received these gifts from a higher being, and therefore she kind of knows the best way to do everything no matter what. And there were so many times in it where you could see that it was just, like you said, she seemed very psychotic almost. And that was how she viewed information, was like, seemed like narcissism and someone who's psychotic and almost a megalomaniac at sometimes. Like, I think she personally felt a lot of power out of having other people's lives like in her hand, and it was more about her and not about the other people or even the satisfaction that she gets from helping them. Like, there was Chrissy and I have had a joke since then, because there's in the beginning there's Matthew, who changes his name to Cyan, and he was like, both of us agreed that this name change would be good for me, or something like that. And I was like, so you went in with this cult and then she changed your name? And I was just, that was weird.
There's a few things that, even in the first episode specifically, but definitely carried on as the four, because it's a 4-episode documentary. The first episode, at the very end, near the very end, one of the guys who's at the retreat says, "So who do you look to as a mentor, as someone, who do you look up to?" And she said, "No one." And he got kind of a confused look on his face, like, "Really?" And she's like, "Don't bring that judgment on me. Like, don't bring that vibes. I'm the most self-aware person there is on the planet that's ever been. Just because you're weak and stuff doesn't." I basically know everything. And like, okay, well, that's interesting. And then as you watch the documentary until the very end, and it's very specifically where they allowed it to be shown in the documentary. Again, we're looking through the eyes of the cameraman, but there are no books except for her books throughout the whole series until like the last half of the last episode, in any of her property. And that, to me, whenever you're giving advice and you're saving people's lives and stuff, not having books around, she does spend quite a bit of time on the internet, which tells where she gets a lot of her methods from, like some of her Jewish Kabbalah, I can never say it, Kabbalah type methods and stuff are definitely an internet version of it. It's not the true Kabbalic ways. But at the very end of the last episode, one of the guys who finally has the courage to leave the group, he packs in his box. Oh goodness, it's Robert Cialdini's book. I want to say it's Persuasion, but it's not. Persuasion. And it's a great book. It's a book on how you influence people. It's how you do little things to make people more likely to be agreeable.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if she had access to that book. I would imagine she did, but it was very interesting that was the book that he put in his box, and we don't see any other books in the rest of the show other than her books. And that tells me a lot about how she's even kind of gathering her data and stuff, because even being very self-aware, there were things that she was dead wrong on. If you did not have a family that abused you, she would basically put you under some kind of hypnosis or a lot of agreement circles until you basically go like, "Oh wow, I didn't realize my family was abusing me."
Yeah, totally.
And I think what she does as a whole is very dangerous, but they did make it clear in the documentary, the PI, and this PI actually has some really cool credentials. They don't mention it once in the documentary, which kind of was weird. Like, I don't know who this private investigator is, but I went and looked her up, and she actually has done some pretty major things. Like, she's a fairly famous she's like the celebrity private investigator.
Yeah.
So that made me feel a little bit better that, like, this isn't somebody who's just like, "Oh, I'm just a little old lady." But she did make it clear that if you're in the inner circle with Teal, that was where the most dangerous was. But even the little, like the not the innermost circle, but the circle just surrounding the innermost circle, where like people that paid the money for the retreats, that is very dangerous. Like with a girl that got waterboarded, basically, would be in that group. And then you have a wider circle, which is the most of the people that come in contact either through her books or YouTube, and that is not considered dangerous. That's considered maybe a little bit on the cultish side, but there's no agreements being made. It's just basically what looks like possibly bad self-help.
Yeah,
but it's a disturbing documentary. I wouldn't really recommend it if you get freaked out easily. But my wife and I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really liked it. I think like through the whole thing, like I was just sitting there and being like, I can't believe that they themselves went out and got this private investigator. They themselves got these camera people and let them in. Like, that she may have some self-awareness, but there was very little, I think, awareness of how people would interpret that. And maybe it was, I think the best way to describe how I felt was I was like, this is wild. And it was wild that, that's kind of a experience, like a type of media that I think would blow up the whole thing, right? So I'm kind of curious what comes out of this, basically. Like, I know there's a documentary on Amazon. I still haven't watched that yet, but I just found it, for someone that had just seen a couple of YouTube videos of her, like, I found this to be much different than that, and seeing how the inner circle operates was very, very weird.
Yeah.
Like, I really felt like it was very interesting, but I felt like I was inside kind of, a voyeur on a cult in action. And
you were.
Yeah, and was waiting basically for a point where she's like, well, let's drink this. They made that special juice that looked delicious at one time, and I was like, well, that could literally be the special juice that they all use to sacrifice themselves,
Or just the regular Kool-Aid from Jonestown.
Yeah.
So some of my background and some of this research, because I think it might be at least interesting to say the least. Timothy McVeigh was the one that was convicted and admitted that he bombed the Alfred P. Murrah building in 1995. And because of me living in Oklahoma City at the time and having the same last name, went through a lot of trauma with that. And a few years later, when I had access to the internet and started learning how to search things, read some stuff of why he specifically bombed the Murrah building, and it had to do with David Koresh, the way that the AFT went after the compound in Waco, and that was the reason. That was allegedly the final tip-off of why he was planning this horrible thing. So I did a lot of research on David Koresh and understanding David Koresh, the Branch Davidians, for those of you that might have remember it from that. He was the cult leader. And then, of course, when you type in David Koresh, you type in cult leaders, all of a sudden all these other cult leaders come up. So I probably spent, 10 hours straight the first time I looked up this stuff, of going from David Koresh to Jim Jones and seeing some of the things that went with it. And I've read a few different books. Not that makes me an expert, but I've some fairly high-level books regarding psychopathy and cults, and what they do and how they kind of do some of the stuff. So I don't even watch videos like what she would have, if you would have sent me a video of her just doing the YouTube, like probably 30 seconds in, I probably would have just been like, yeah, I didn't really like it. I wasn't interested. It seemed too weird to me. and I still haven't watched a video. I don't plan on watching a video. So don't send me those links, please, people. But yeah, she had a very, it wouldn't be, if it weren't that TV has made fun of made this kind of trope of cult leaders, TV shows and stuff for the past 30 years. And the fact that she literally seemed like she was playing a role in a TV show, like a really bad TV show. It would be funny if it weren't that it was true. And I guess it's a little funny, even though it is true. Thankfully, the people in the inner circle and stuff, it doesn't seem like even the people who are very much against her did not say that there was any physical violence or sexual violence that was done. So that was at least a little bit comforting that it was emotional and psychological damage. Not that that's ever good, but it's also nice to know like people weren't killed being in the inner circle or were forced into some kind of submission that could have done other kind of trauma and stuff. But I do think the documentary is a very good watch of just the culture surrounding, like how she became famous through YouTube and became an influencer and stuff as on her way to this spiritual guru kind of stuff. It's interesting. And the documentary kind of does that in the background. It's not a forefront question. But yeah, definitely a cult.
Yeah, there was. So I saw a list as like 100 top spiritual leaders. I don't remember who put it out recently, but she was up there with like Eckhart Tolle and stuff like that. Deepak Chopra. So people that are more well known and I'd say don't espouse dangerous ideology. So I don't know what to think about it still, I think at this point, but it was just really the one thing that I was left with was that they didn't think that there was anything wild and crazy about it.
Yeah, they thought everything that they were doing was perfectly normal.
Yeah, and that was one of the most surprising things that I've seen, witnessed in quite a long time.
Yeah. There's this kind of saying that whenever film crews go into, I think The Office, the TV show The Office, makes a joke about this at one point, a few different points throughout the show series. But when cameras are first there, you can't not notice the cameras.
Yeah. But
eventually you become acclimated and they become just part of the scenery. And as you notice throughout most of the documentary, there's not very many times where one of the staff members or Teal looks directly at the camera to say anything. Like you can tell that they really just don't seem to know that the camera is there, that the camera is a part of the culture there at that point. Even when they had so when she's talking to Amir one-on-one out on the thing where they're seated, there's 2 or 3 camera people literally within 2 feet of them doing this, but neither of them is reacting to the camera. Like there's a lot more raw emotion, which was cool, but you can tell that they really did just believe the camera was part of it was no longer something special. It was just part of what the culture, the nature that was there.
Yeah.
And for spoilers, for those of you that don't want to look it up on Wikipedia or watch it, basically the story that drives the narrative for this documentary is Teal's top aide, a guy that she's known since she was a kid when she ran away from home, who's her top advisor. He's basically her CEO of running the business while she focuses on being the product. He talks to a girl online. She comes out and visits him and becomes a volunteer for this in the inner circle. And Teal is not happy about it, but is like, well, I'll give you my blessing. I will give you this one thing. and they eventually get married, and this girl's doing everything possible to try to make Teal like her. So she, in my opinion, pretends to be a dead person's, being the mom of being a person's dead mom.
She was really good at it.
And because some of the comments she makes after it were like, yeah, I just really want Teal to be happy with me. There's some other things that she does that you can tell that she's really trying hard. But there was a part where they were sitting in the 3-point stance, the crisscross applesauce kind of stance, and she is naturally doing it. And everybody around her, the people who have been around Teal for years, are like struggling to keep themselves straight, and their eyes are opening constantly and stuff, and they're wobbling. And she's like in a perfect pose, her fingers in perfect position, just like Spencer would be proud kind of thing. You know, this is a lady who has definitely spent time in this. And as she continues to be there, she's like noticing little things that aren't little. Teal's literally cussing out a lady who says like, I don't think you're there to support me. And Teal's like, what are you mother beep, 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 thinking about me not supporting you? You're here, aren't you? And then Teal's like, why is she like this? And the girl, the new wife is like, well, maybe if you would listen to what she has to say, and we could think about how to help her. Like, you crossed the line here. You know? How dare you say that I can learn something? And then, so at the end of the documentary, basically Teal is about to kick her out, and her husband, who they've been married about maybe a month or two at this point at most, he has to choose whether he's going to stay with his lifelong friend who he started this business with, or go with his new bride. And he chooses the bride,
which is a great decision.
Yeah, I mean, I have so much respect of somebody that was able to do that, and because of the network he set up and the way that she talked about him for all these years, when he said he's taking a step back from the company and everything, her Facebook page and Instagram page are like just filling up with people like, hey, we love you so much. We're so thankful. Like, it's great that you're married, blah, blah, blah. And Teal's on the other side. Like at the exact same time they're filming her, and she said like, oh, if they really knew how he was, they wouldn't be saying these things. And we're like,
yeah, if they said away from me.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. And then at one point they go to the outside, and you see this boy jumping on a trampoline. And I'm like, whose kid is that? And Brenda said, well, that's Teal's. It's like, Teal's. And she's like, remember in the first episode? It's like, oh, I completely forgot she was a mom, because we've only seen the kid at the very beginning of the first episode and the very end of the last episode. We don't hear anything else about this dude at all.
Well, I felt so bad for him, too, because his dad left, you know?
Yeah.
His de facto dad was the guy that was the right-hand man. And
the look on the guy who's her like producer, the
older guy from Germany.
Yeah, that was the tennis coach and stuff. Yeah. And he's like, I wish I could be with you. You could just see it on his face. And then you see her assistant who's like, get out of here, you evil traitor. Like, it was just such a weird thing. But most of the people kind of identified with the guy who left and were like, yeah, we wish we could too, but we don't have the strength. Yeah. We don't have the deal. Like, he gets so much percentage of her business and stuff because he's the one that the names and stuff are in his business. Like, his name is the one. So he's not asking for all of it, but but they're going to definitely have to give him enough of a cut because they're afraid he's going to say something. And I'm like, I think the documentary says enough. Maybe it's just me. I'm a little crazy here, but the rest of the people that are in this, yeah. And it was never about him. She kept on talking about how he did this to her. Yeah. And then again, she's completely surprised that she was a cult leader. She was actually surprised that, oh, we don't make people have to choose us over their family. That's what they want to do. And then immediately after, as you said earlier, they're going like, okay, we need to bring out our contracts and we need to make it even stricter. No married couples. And if they have kids, there's no kids. And everybody in the group's like, oh, if it makes you feel any better, we're not planning on having kids.
Yeah. It was...
So let me just say, if anybody ever tells you you can't have kids to be a part of an inner circle, that's a cult.
This is probably a good place to leave it.
I want to say one last thing, though. So I think the biggest attraction of why Teal Swan has become so famous is she is a very close lookalike to Megan Fox. In fact, I did a picture by picture for Brenda, and she's like, "Yep." She looks like a Megan Fox that seems to be smart. So I think that's a huge. If you would like to learn more about the New Next podcast, find us at thenewnextpodcast.com, where you can suggest a topic you would like for us to cover. If you enjoyed what you heard, share the podcast, tell a friend about it, or rate us with 5 stars. We appreciate you.